Thank you for joining Dr. James Rini and I, the Curiosity Conduit, Dana Ortiz, for a look behind the curtain of letting destiny deliver. Dr. Rini is a practicing psychotherapist for the last 46 years, and I am a retired law enforcement officer with 26 years experience, and am now a psychology student. Dr. Rini's book, Letting Destiny Deliver, is available in digital format on Amazon and an audio version on his Mental Stock YouTube channel. We are going to talk about the leveling down process. This conversation may lead to feelings of inspiration and curiosity, and it could create some inner movement. That's all welcome. Life will reveal your destiny through all opportunities you keep yourself available for. So allow yourself to stay open, and let's see what destiny delivers. So a few recordings ago, it was explained that I was attempting to break down parts of your book for the average everyday person. And I was chuckling a bit because I've read your book. You were laughing too. I don't know if this was for the same reason or not. But with that said, you allude to a mythical average person. Can you explain why average is mythical?
Well, because simply we can take the average age of the people in this room, and neither one of us would fit that age. So averaging is just that. It's if we were to equal everything out, each event, this would be how many would occur if we were to equal things out. But the if word is the key word there. So that's why it's magical, because that person doesn't exist. The average person doesn't exist. Okay, just like the average age in this room does not exist, but yet it is the average.
Right. So when I had said before about the average everyday person, like I was laughing because what is that?
Okay, well that's an excellent question in that, and this is kind of connected to the leveling down process. The way society works is we try to fit everybody with a one size fits all. And that is so contrary to letting destiny deliver, because to be mentally healthy, you have to recognize who you are as an individual, embrace and honor that, and have the strength and courage to be different. But society puts pressure on us to be average, just like everybody else. That's why all the housing developments look the same. Yes, you get a choice of 3 or 4 different style homes, apartment complexes, they all look the same. They're standardizing everything and everybody. GIs, everybody's made to look the same. Government issue, you're not a person anymore. You're a number, you see. And with that, you lose your individuality, you lose your identity, and without those, you lose mental health.
And just for anybody listening, you really just explained everything that we're going to talk about here today. I will be asking questions about things you just went over on purpose, because this is something that I think somebody needs to hear over and over. And I'll get into that a little bit later as to why. So for those who are unfamiliar with Dr. Carl Jung, can you explain the idea of the leveling down process for them?
Well, if you think about just those words, you're leveling down, you're making something level, you're making it equal from beginning to end. And what happens then, as we are born into this world, and whatever time period we're in, we're born into that time period. And for us, that's the way the world has always been, because that's the time period. And the world tells us how we should behave, what we should think, how we shouldn't behave, what we shouldn't think about, making us all the same. And in that way, it levels us down. It's like walking into an empty room and all the walls are white. Okay, there's no enrichment, there's no novelty, there's nothing there to stimulate the senses. Okay, but as individuals, if you think, I'm thinking about music. The artists that are the most successful are the ones that have the most unique voice. It's not the one that sounds like everybody else. And if somebody tries to imitate you and has the same voice as you, they won't be great like you are because they're just imitating somebody else.
Like Ozzy.
So that uniqueness is very much recognized and rewarded when it comes to the arts. But with everything else, it's like, no, we all have to be the same. But again, the problem with that is we never really get to know the self. And it's all ego-based. Because then, we have this boundary that, well, I identify with you, so I should be like you, but I don't identify with you, so I hate you and try to get rid of you. So rather than the self being the center of gravity, the ego then is the center of gravity.
Okay. I would like to read a portion of your book. It says, science displaces the worth of the individual in favor of anonymous units. To the listeners, consider, when have you felt reduced to a label or statistic? And what have helped you feel seen again? Now, I wrote this, and I think that it would be a rare time when somebody would actually feel seen again, when they have felt like a statistic, unless they remove themselves from the complete situation. So, how does defining people by averages or statistics affect their sense of identity and potential?
Well, it's like, in psychiatry, you get labeled, scientific label. For example, you're bipolar. And then people identify as bipolar. I had a client, he was labeled, diagnosed bipolar, and also referred to me. And whenever he was up, it was because he was bipolar. And whenever he was down, it was because he was bipolar. So it had nothing to do with him. His identity became his disorder. And all his behavior then got defined under that disorder. So that's one of the mindsets I had to break in him. Like he was a very, and still is, successful attorney, private, personal injury attorney, multimillionaire. And the psychiatrist who saw him said, you have depression and bipolar. Depression, bipolar, and anxiety. And any patient that I've seen like that is on disability within 6 months. Okay. And he was pretty down and out. He was bedridden, couldn't get up and out. But that wasn't the problem. The reason he was so unstable is because he was in a marriage that he didn't want to be in and wouldn't get out because he didn't want to harm the children. And once he was able to get out of that marriage, he became, through a process, well again, remarried and very happy. The children are adults and they're fine. But that was the thing that was, because he could no longer be himself. Everything he did was to meet his wife's approval, because that's how he existed in the marriage that he didn't want to be a part of, but lost himself in that process.
So what I'm hearing is that it affects the identity and potential of the individual because it doesn't allow them to be authentic.
Well, they then become the label.
They become a label, and it doesn't cultivate growth.
Doesn't help anything. I mean, especially in psychology, it's great to have a label for it, but it doesn't change anything, doesn't fix anything. Okay, and then the scientific answer to that is we'll give you medication. It doesn't fix anything. It relieves symptoms, some more so than in others, and some it creates symptoms. But that scientific approach doesn't fix anything. You then are on that antidepressant for the rest of your life. You see, so because really what is key to mental health is self-actualization. But in order to actualize who you are, you have to be able to tune into who you are, not told who you are. And we don't teach, and that's why people don't see other people. They can't see themselves.
Mm.
And so all those labels, people do that. It's like, oh, if you're over 40, the odds of you finding someone and you're going to be alone for the rest of your life or this. And people buy into that. They buy into statistics. And that defines them, like when our two daughters, were very young, they were very cute and whatever and adorable. And everybody we run into, oh, just wait till they're teenagers. It's going to be the worst, And I wouldn't buy into that. And we had no problem with them when they were teenagers, you see. But a lot of people, it's that mindset. I've also heard, and don't know from personal experience, childbirth is like that. Because we share all these horror stories around childbirth. So therefore, people go in with the expectation that it's going to be horrible, because they've been told it, And so that's what I'm saying. It strips us of our who we really are. And we take on this pseudo identity of who we're not. And tuning into the self, people don't know how to do that. I mean, a lot of people, you ask them how they're feeling, I don't know. Or why does that bother you? I don't know. I mean, they are so not tuned in that they're disconnected. And you can't let destiny deliver if you're disconnected to the very source that is your destiny. It's a long answer, but...
No, it's a good answer. So would a good example of leveling down be when someone has felt like they're just another body at work? They're just another number?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I'm curious, as a psychology student, in your clinical experience, what signals show that someone is beginning to level up or break the spell after being leveled down?
Excellent question. And I like that because it's looking at the positive just rather than the problem, What can one feel? Like clients will come in and they come in, distraught in whatever way. And, hopefully and fortunately they'll say, I feel better, And really what's happening, that's what they're experiencing. But really what's happened is it's increased neural integration. If they leave here feeling worse, that's decreased neural integration. In other words, you confuse them more than you've brought about clarity, you see. And clarity is one of the things. And you find yourself being happier. You find yourself better able to tell who or what you want in your life and who or what you don't want in your life. You like yourself a lot better. Tend not to beat up on yourself. Sleep better. Regulate your appetite better.
Those are good. They're good examples. I like those. So here's a fun question. Can dreams play a role in revealing where someone is stuck in the leveling down process?
Absolutely. I think that's probably the primary function. It's funny, I don't know if you saw the sign, but it's a quote of Carl Jung, and it's, dreams whisper truth. And by whisper is, you got to really work at hearing what they're saying. If somebody's whispering, you got to get close to them and you got to really concentrate on what they're saying. Rather than normal speech, you don't have to work that hard to hear them. In the same way with the dream. And the particular problem with people understanding their dreams is they're using the wrong mind to interpret them. And I'll explain that. The conscious mind is literal. The unconscious mind is symbolic, metaphorical, and analogical. So when we dream in that language. And that's why people, when they're using their conscious, logical, linear mind, go, it makes no sense. Because it's metaphorical, it's symbolic, it's analogical. Okay, which is a whole different language that the unconscious speaks. The unconscious is also nonlinear, as I said, which means what? It means it doesn't go in order. It bounces all over the place. So that doesn't make sense to the conscious mind, which needs things very linear.
Oh, I love all over the place. That is
but you liking that part of your unconscious functioning.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah. But most people like linear, that's why they have a hard time with uncertainty. So what if this or what if that? You see, where the unconscious is designed to deal with the spontaneous, with the unexpected. But it needs the conscious mind's help to at least allow you to go through the experience.
Absolutely.
But the conscious mind, because it is so linear and needs to know, often will avoid that. So it's kind of a trap. And you can't level up.
It's a trap. It's a spell. This is where I was talking about the need for this to be explained in different ways over and over. So it seems to be rare and powerful to be seen as not seen as a demographic or a data point. But as a whole person, right? So this is a rare thing that individuals, whether it's corporations, wherever, and you're at work and it's just this whole leveling down is happening. It's rare to be seen as an individual in those instances. So you quote Jung in saying, "We're ruled, fed, clothed, and educated as a social unit." So part of what I love to do, and I've been doing it for my far back as I can remember, primarily in my adult life. And it was really heavy as a detective that I like to go to the source, as far to the source as I can go. So whether I'm reading a book or something of that nature, like I want to see the references that they use, that they were inspired. So I really like this quote, and you do a lot of referencing with Dr. Jung. So, of course, I look at the reference. And I go to buy this book, and I want the book. I don't want the digital form. I want the original book that I can get that's in English, not German. Okay. So I've been looking. Now, this particular book that I'm looking for, there's 2 out there that are for sale. There was 3. There's 2. And they were like $124, $130, and there's only 2 that you can buy for sale. I'm like, no, just wait. I always wait. I will get what I want for the price that I want. And I did. But that's not the end of the story. So I get this book. One, it's my favorite color, which is purple. And I go to the page. So, one thing that I love about older books, especially if somebody interesting had it before, they will mark in it. Now, this person was very intentional with what they marked and where they marked. This came in a group of 3, 2 other spectacular books. One that was published. Oh, they're all interpretations, obviously, from Carl Jung. One is from 1920, totally intact. These people didn't know what they had. Anyway, it's
funny, the book that you pull out, The Undiscovered Self, because that's what I'm talking about here. The undiscovered self, man.
I know. Interesting enough, I go to the page that you just quoted. There is
He marked it, or she marked it. Yeah.
Marked it with an asterisk, the only asterisk in the entire book. And if you look as my witness here,
Yeah.
there's only very few things that are marked in here. But this is the exact quote that I was looking to discuss and to read. And I will read the full thing here now. The individual is increasingly deprived of the moral decision as to how he should live his own life, and instead is ruled, fed, clothed, and educated as a social unit, accommodated in the appropriate housing unit, and amused in accordance with the standards that give pleasure and satisfaction to the masses. Very interesting.
So here's something that I find interesting that most people don't know. Carl Jung and Albert Einstein were friends. In fact, Albert Einstein used Carl Jung to help him when he would get stuck with his law of relativity. Because one of the things that Einstein said was his laboratory was in his mind. He didn't have an actual laboratory. Everything he came up with, he did just by thinking. So he would use Jung to help him, come up with a metaphor or something unconscious that was going on to help him make breakthroughs. So I also find it fascinating because Albert Einstein redefined physics, and Carl Jung really redefined psychology from Freudian psychology, and was so right on, so ahead of his time, because so many of the things that he learned just by observing have now been scientifically proven with what we know about the brain and the mind. So having referenced him so much, I didn't know at the time that he and Einstein were like, two peas in a pod.
It's neat.
Yeah.
Very cool people. So, what does it take to break free from that kind of conditioning? Because that's what that is. Like, you're being ruled, everything's just being handed to you. You're going around like, just sheep, just follow everybody.
Well, there's a lot of distraction that goes on. Get distracted by football and get distracted by trivia and get distracted by all the things, An analogy for you, I'm trying to get it back in that. How do you break that? Okay, it came back to me. The analogy is this. Somebody does a magic trick and you go, ooh, how'd you do that? That must be magic. And then they tell you what the trick is, and you don't see the ooh and ah and the magic of it anymore. Okay, so the key in breaking out of it is to see the trick. And then it's not so fascinating or captivating anymore. And worked at a mental health center, one of my first jobs, and the executive director there was very unliked because he tended to attack people. So people were trying to get him fired, were talking behind his back, were quitting. And one of my experiences with him is we do group supervision, and somebody bring in a tape of a client that they did, and he would supervise it. And person before me, he just tore, and I was brand new at this place, so I was just kind of learning this very quickly. And he would rip them apart, and then it was my turn, and had the tape where I thought, I'm not going to get ripped up. Sure enough, he ripped me apart, and it upset me, not outwardly, but inwardly, and I said, I want to talk to you after lunch, because lunch was right after that. And I'm sitting there at lunchtime and go, wait a minute. He's just doing to us what he tells us to do to families. Because the way he was teaching us to work with families is tear them apart and then build them back up the way they need to be. And that's what he was doing to us as therapists. So instead of being upset when I went back, I went in the room with a smile on my face. I go, I know what you did. He goes, did it work? And he had more respect for me after that. And it was my first year. I mean, he put me on committees. He would take me to do talks at places because I saw right through him. I saw his trick. And it didn't have any power over me like it did the other people. So when you can see the trick behind things, and there's a lot of distraction. It's total distraction. Because the mind that is really curious is being distracted into what's really entertaining. Curiosity killed the cat, but satisfaction brought it back.
I don't like that analogy as the curiosity conduit.
But I'm saying have curiosity, don't, and this is, to me, a lot of what this is about, because is to help people find the pathway which has been buried under thousands of years of sand. And I use that analogy, finding the self is like being an archaeologist. You've got to, move away those parts that don't belong and find those parts that do belong. And it's impossible for people to do that anymore. There are too many distractions and too many ways to become distracted. And we're attached to a computer all the time, the phone.
Yes, we are. And I definitely am. I know that. So, do you have anything else you would like to add?
So we're at the end?
We're at the end, yes. But I always want to make sure, to include you if you get to add anything.
I can go on forever and ever. So I will add this. In thinking about me doing this, one thing that is always hard for me to do is talk to an imaginary audience, for one. Okay, and then number two, just this whole format and doing this is not something I've done before. And then three, my introversion stymied me somewhat. And you knew that because you were saying me practicing and whatever. But I do feel at this point and moving forward that I'm unstymied.
Yes. You are on fire. To me, you're an extrovert today.
Thank you.
Yes. You're most welcome. Okay, so thank you for joining Dr. Rini and I on this journey behind the curtain of letting destiny deliver. Join us next time as we will be starting chapter 2, which covers the mind and body. Before we go, ask yourself, what part of your life might destiny be trying to speak through right now? Keep exploring, stay curious, and remember, destiny isn't something you chase, it's something you allow. Until next time, be well.